really thankful you're here on this third night. I know it kind of can get down to low on the priorities, but really we are, and I know I speak for Elena, just super thankful you guys have invested the time in this. So I'm gonna pray and then just dive right in. Father in heaven, thank you so much for just this class and for the faithfulness of people that have attended it. And I just ask that you honor that how you see fit. Pray that the work we, all of us have put in, will bear fruit for the forwardness of your kingdom, that people will see, will know us by our love for one another, and that they will know that we are your disciples. Well, thankful for your son, for him coming, for him dying, teaching us how to be us, and then rising from the dead. We await his return. In the name of his risen name, amen.
Amen.
Perfect. Well, like I said, it's Better Together, class 3, final class tonight. Then going in the veins of the Acts, Act 1, creation, Act 2, fall, Act 3, redemption. Spoke of those first 3 in those first 2 classes, and Act 4 and 5 will be spoken of tonight. Gonna skip 4 for a time period, and then so go straight on to Act 5 of consummation. What will we be when we're with Christ? And then come back to Act 4 and how do we live into that? So kind of glancing over the review real quickly, gonna dive right into Act 5, consummation. Going to share my screen. One moment, y'all. Y'all see it? Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So there, week 3, had to guess on that and got it right. So awesome. Week 3, consummation. Where are we going? We are going to Revelation 21. If y'all have a Bible handy, you can turn to Revelation 21. If not, no worries, I'll read it for us. This is from the ESV, I believe. Oh, NIV, excuse me, NIV. Starting verse 1 of Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of the heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and he himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. For the old order of things has passed away." He who is seated on the throne said, "I am making all things new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost, for the spring of water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all of this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." Y'all, that's our hope. That's where we're going. And I don't know about y'all, but that just gets me excited to think about not only us being with God and he being with us, but us being one. Like he will be their people, or that we will be together with God as one. He will wipe every tear, so no more crying, there will no more death. In a world full of that, as we all have been acutely aware, the old order of counting COVID deaths will pass away. And that's where we are headed. And I just gonna have us sit in that for a little bit to dwell on that, and then one or two quick comments after Elana speaks.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know I was speaking. Oh, this portion. Okay. So as we, am I supposed to speak?
Yeah,
now?
go
I'll
for
give
it.
them time
Go
to
for it.
dwell. Sorry.
Go for it.
As we go through tonight, actually, it's going to be primarily driven by discussion, just as we, I mean, Dan's about to talk about the not yet, the now and the not yet of the kingdom, this kind of in between place between where we've been and where we're going. But we want to have this be a class primarily that the whole group can take a part in. So we're going to be discussing, asking questions for each point. And so to facilitate that group discussion well, we just ask that you keep your comments somewhat brief so that everyone has a chance to speak and we can get a lot of different voices as part of the discussion. So if at some point we have to move us on, cut you off, move you on, please don't be offended. We're just trying to facilitate a whole group discussion tonight. So we'll kind of keep moving us through each topic, but just up front, wanted to give that little heads up.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to be going through probably 4 or 5, I don't know how many there are there, but now and not yet of the kind of things that we have coming through, and we'll give kind of some background on each of them. But first one is, it's called spiritual friendship. So 1 or 2 quick comments on right when I say that, what words or phrases come to your mind when I hear that. So feel free to unmute yourself and give some 2 cents or so.
Discernment.
Oops, sorry. We're trying to see you and share the screen at the same time. Sorry.
Yeah.
Discernment.
Yeah.
Say more about that. Was that Julia?
That in spiritual friendship, we can help one another discern what the Lord is saying in our lives and in our context.
Love that.
Cynthia wrote in the comments, someone to journey through life with. Yeah.
I think just recognizing God's love for each other. Like me seeing his love for each of you.
So not just a friendship of a mutual appreciation, but actually being a channel of God's love for one another as well.
Yeah.
Is that fair, Matt?
Something like that. I'm not exactly sure entirely what I'm saying, but something like that.
That's what I hear. That's great.
Another comment, someone who knows and cares for my soul. That's profound.
I also, sorry, didn't mean to.
Oh, go ahead, Will.
Go ahead, Will.
I was just saying, I would say somebody who's a champion for you. So who is kind of like a cheerleader through life's highs and lows.
Yeah. So I think us in the evangel, I like all of those answers. I think they all resonate well. Us in the West don't have a great theology of friendship, but church history does, thankfully. Thankful for brothers and probably sisters, but those that have written on it are brothers. Saint Alred of, I don't know how to say it. He was yep, there he goes. There he goes. Thank you, Ken. Right where I'm headed. Alred of Revue wrote a classic. It's in, he was 11 to 1200, so old, I mean, over 1,000 years old. Wrote a classic work on spiritual friendship that a modern Episcopal guy named Wesley Hill wrote an updated version on a pretty significant theology of what does friendship really look like. in 21st century Western culture. I think it's challenging a lot of norms. It's challenging a lot of, especially for men, homophobia. It's challenging a lot of just uncomfortable boundaries that, as we are getting ready to turn to, are fairly biblical. So we look in the scriptures. I think in my conversations around spiritual friendship, I come up with three main ones that are found in the scriptures. Number one, in Ruth chapter 1, Ruth and Naomi. You all probably know that background, but the famous scripture, Ruth tells Naomi, where you go, I go. As a widow, where you go, I go. Your people will be my people, and my God will be your God. This knitting together of Ruth leaving her, I think she was a Moabite woman, going back to Israel with Naomi, and then serving God, and then ultimately marrying an Israelite, which Naomi is in the line of Christ as well. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it's cool to have that line of friendship consistently, as we're going to see, within the line of Jesus. Then continuing on in the Old Testament, another example is David and Jonathan. Throughout the end of 1 Samuel and at the beginning of 2 Samuel chronicling David's exile from Saul, Jonathan and David essentially make a covenant in Samuel 20, where it says he loved him as his own soul. This deep affection that later in 2 Samuel, it says, 2 Samuel 26, 2 Samuel 1, verse 26, I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. He's weeping over Jonathan's death. I am very pleasant. You have been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women. And commentators have, I'm like I said multiple times, I'm not an Old Testament scholar, but that's pretty passionate language and strong language for the type of brotherhood and intimacy that the scriptures allow for. I mean, the King of Israel communicated. And then ultimately, in John 13, starting in 23, the upper room discourse, Jesus is gathering his disciples, preparing them for his death. Starting in 23, Jesus says, or John is writing here, one of the disciples whom Jesus loved was reclining at the table at Jesus' side. Then picking up back in 25, so that the disciple leaning back against Jesus. And throughout, and I don't know why, one argument is that throughout John's gospel, he doesn't mention himself. Some say it's humility. Some say it's, who knows? But the one whom Jesus loved, or the beloved of Jesus, I think different translations say it differently. But talk about that closeness of Jesus, even at the Last Supper here, the physical intimacy that John had with Jesus. So there's just some interesting, and kind of, in some ways, I think our culture would say inappropriate, but it's the scriptures, so I don't know that we can say that. Forms of articulating a kind of a vision of friendship between men and women that is against, as we've been talking this whole time, against the individualistic tendencies of our culture. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think it was it that someone cares for my soul. What was the wording there? Someone who knows and cares for my soul. Yeah, there's, I think, evidence of that in these passages, this sense of like, oh, we don't just do fun things together or hang out and go get a drink together or whatever. It's a deep, abiding intimacy that is non-sexual and precious. And obviously it had its own cultural context, and the lack of homophobia in that context was helpful for that. So it's not that we throw out our own cultural context completely, but I think that this kind of allows us to build an understanding, at least, of what is intended in friendship. What can it be that we haven't allowed it to be, or haven't been comfortable with it being up to this point? So yeah, I guess that's my thoughts
thanks.
on that.
Love
Yeah. Any other thoughts on spiritual friendship before we move on to our next item?
And be a safe place to grieve together, to mourn, and also to rejoice.
Yes, it's going to be a safe place for the soul. It has to be expansive enough for all of the experiences of the soul, the heights and the depths, and no kind of off limits. Oh, that makes me uncomfortable. Sorry. See you tomorrow. Exactly. Grieving, rejoicing.
That's kind of how I think of it too. The word encouragement is what comes to mind, of giving courage to the other. Just being there for each other, no matter if it's positive or negative, or just helping each other process life.
I like that, Evie. Encouragement is literally giving someone courage. And I don't know if it's just because I'm a 6 on the Enneagram or if it's, I don't know. I love that encouraging is literally giving courage to someone else.
Yeah. I
think there's,
go ahead, Stephanie.
No, I know you go. I'm sorry to.
No, it's all you.
I was just gonna say, I love. I think there's also an element too that is just like an unconditional companionship, and there, like I think of even just like some of my favorite books. It's always like the close confidant companionship that they're just trudging through. It's nothing that anyone hasn't said already with like the just unconditional elements, but I the word that first came to my mind was companionship, and just a safe soundboard too.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to kind of get into that a little bit later tonight, but I think what you're talking about, Steffi, there is not only believing the best in other people, but trusting that they're believing the best in you. And that is, to have that in friendship and any relationship is a game changer.
Yeah, and having it be unconditional means there's a staying power. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but in a culture that's so transient and moving here and there, or that primarily values the covenant of marriage as something that will hold people together, hopefully speaking, right? But yeah, the friendships often don't always carry that same level of commitment. And so building those unconditional relationships with staying power, what does that look like? And how do we do that better in friendships, so that we can say there's like a companion of my soul, whether that's a spouse or not, or a spouse and others to walk with as well in those deep spaces. So I love that.
I think of Anna Green Gables at wanting her bosom friend, and it's a lot of what you're talking about. But the people that I think of, especially long-term, that have been my friends, have been the ones that they're always welcoming you. You don't have to wonder. If I knock on their door, or I call them at 9:30 at night because I need to talk. Are they going to want to talk to me? These are the people that they put everything aside and they'll be there. So I think of that as being just, they always have the welcome mat out.
Yeah.
Mhm. So true. Mm. Is that Gary that posted the?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near, which is so perfect for as we consider specifically thinking about the consummation, where we're going, anticipating the kingdom having broken in now through Christ's first coming. We're seeking to realize that here on earth and build towards the day when it is all completely fulfilled and we are perfect in him and with one another.
And I think hopefully from this class, I say this for over clarification. I don't just mean this for one subset of people, meaning singles, like married people need these kinds of friendships as well outside of their marriage. So just to be clear, that's what I'm communicating.
Yes, yes, and amen. All right, so kind of moving on from, we can talk about spiritual friendship for ages, but
Yes.
we want to talk about other elements in our culture in which we're trying to hold the tension. The kingdom is coming and yet it's not yet fully here. So how do we navigate some of these things, especially some of the cultural realities? And one of those that comes to mind is the transience of our culture and the high value for independent movement, to be able to move here and there when you want to, how you want to. And so when you think about that element of our culture, the transient nature of it, how do you see this impacting community, especially kingdom community? We're fine with silence, by the way, no problem.
It may feel like it's not worth the investment because you never know how long they're going to be in your sphere. So why go deep?
Mm-hmm. Can dissuade people from wanting to invest because it might be short term.
And I think it's pretty vulnerable to become vulnerable in investing and putting yourself out or pursuing someone and you're not sure, if their level of interest or commitment or whatever else. And so there's always this dance of like, like where are you at and how to navigate that pursuit versus receiving. And if it doesn't have a steady solidness, mutual commitment, then it can feel really almost too vulnerable or maybe even unsafe, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
Totally, Steffi. Yes. And when you do that enough, it's like, well, why even try anymore? Yeah.
I grew up in a military family, and for sure we would move every 3 to 4 years. So there was a great hesitancy to make deep friendships. It was enjoy the people while you're there, but know that it wasn't going to be a lasting relationship. And therefore, there was a great reluctance to be in any kind of a covenant-like relationship.
Yeah, and that was that was the only reason I was hesitant to marry him. But after 43 years,
hey, we stuck it out. We're good.
Yeah.
He's got staying power after all.
I think in this day and age, with all the ways we can stay connected with the phone and over the internet, I have some very deep spiritual friendships with people who don't live here. Yes. We have had the privilege over the last 30 to 35 years of 10 couples who live around the country who, of course, it didn't work this year, but twice a year we get together. And we have monthly prayer requests we send to one another. I could call any one of those women at any time. We could call any of those couples and they would come. I mean, obviously it's taken a long time, but I don't think that in our life, the transiency has really made a difference.
Yeah.
I love, Beth, what you said about it's taken a long time. I think my generation, a proud millennial, has wants everything and we want it now, including relationships. And I came to realize that a 10-year friendship takes 10 years to make. And that as also in kind of in some ways getting off track of transients, but I love that you're adding that value to, there's staying power in staying.
I have a related experience, I think. As a young adult, my husband and I lived in a community where everybody worked for the same company that all of a sudden was doing all these transfers. So all of our friends were moving away. And it was just grief after grief after grief. We built these friendships and they all moved. And then the friends that we were the closest to, and the husbands in particular, my husband and Carolyn's husband, they were really close friends, which we recognized among men. It's especially hard, it seems. And so when they left, because of the same company moving them, we had dinner together, we cried, we did the thing. And I figured that it would be like all the rest. But they gave us, at that dinner time, they gave us tickets for the three of us. They gave us vouchers, airline vouchers. 30 years ago, that was actually a bit of expense 30 years ago because they were expensive. And that showed their commitment. And they've lived in Texas and India. So they're not real close, especially when they're in India, but they've been around. They were around during my husband's illness. They were there for the funeral. Carolyn went with me to my dad's funeral in New York. I just called her and said, I got to go to New York, and I didn't expect anything. And she's like, when are you going? I said, tomorrow. She says, I'm going with you. And, where do you get that from? But it's another one of those long-term kind of friendships that has been built on commitment, a commitment to be there like spiritual family.
I think there's been a lot of, go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, okay. My parents have experienced a couple sets of their friends who have moved. They grew up together, the guys did, in the same town. So, but I'm sorry, I kind of backtracked, but they moved to go be with their grandkids just because they wanted to, and it's cross country kind of thing. And I know that's sort of a thing now. And I think that was a downfall for both of their friends. Both of them moved back because they couldn't find the support that they had as much as they loved being there for, with grandkids. So that's an interesting twist on things too. Sometimes it's not, you don't want to always leave if you have that choice to not leave that support system.
And there's something so powerful about, like, it is choosing family, like what you are describing is so incredible, both of you. It's like, yeah, chosen family.
I think another challenge of a transient society is if we are intentional about relationships and building them each place that we come, we only have so much relational capacity. So it's trying to determine, wait, who do I have to let go? Where do I release? Like you feel like a little junk bug that's got stuff falling. How do you prioritize and leave an open chair for a new person and evangelize, but nourish your soul and prioritize the relationships that have been forged before and be ready for what new? So the capacity, the human limitations amidst the need and the desire I think is exacerbated by the fact that we do have these different realms that we've lived in and worked in.
Mhm.
And we will talk about that as well, limitations. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, part of the tension. We'd love to be limitless in our ability to engage others and have a million billion relationships. And yet, yeah, we are limited. So how do we reconcile that? And I think that I've heard numerous like positive mentions about the technology and the ability that we can have this class right now via Zoom. And I think that because we have that capacity now to be connected across the sphere, we are trying to manage and keep up with a whole lot more relationships than we could before in our more localized spheres. So that definitely presents a challenge, and the need for even greater discernment, because I can connect with all of these people. Should I? Or who and what is God calling us to in that? And those are not easy questions or one size fits all for everyone. So yeah, I think that as I think about the transients, and it sounds like we've got a lot of people with experience of really committed relationships, which is beautiful. I know there's also a lot of heartache of people who you spend a lot of time with. I know a lot of singles. I've experienced this and have heard other friends express it to me as well. These deep, deep friendships, and then their friend gets married and then moves across the country with their spouse, and just never kind of interact again on the same level. And there's, as much as you're rejoicing for that union, there's this profound loss, and there doesn't always feel like there's space for both. And a sense of like, I thought we had a covenanted friendship, and I'm celebrating this covenant that you're making with someone else, but like, what about our covenant? And the tendency at times for even transitions in life and into marriage, or I know transitions out of marriage for people have also drastically affected their sense of community. And so being sensitive also to those transitions, and what that means. How do we preserve, sacrifice to retain those relationships? And this kind of segues into our
real quick.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I don't have the exact quote, but I'm gonna put the book. It's a fantastic book. It's called Spiritual Friendship. His name's Wesley Hill. He's a New Testament scholar, and he's actually I think he's an Episcopal priest or a deacon out east. But he's quoting a 2011 article. I just like it a lot, so I know all this jazz. 2011 article in the Boston Globe by a writer named Carrie English, and she was chronicling being a bridesmaid in a wedding to her roommate getting married, standing up for her roommate, and as they're saying their vows of to have and to hold, in sickness and death, you're my best friend, all these kind of like commitment words. She's like, well, I thought the house we had together was a home, and I thought you were my best friend. And she ends it with, being platonically heartbroken wouldn't be so hard if we were allowed to be. And I probably just botched the quote, but it's just adding to that consensus, kind of or not consensus, but to that idea of what Elena was just saying about the transition, those transitions within that spiritual friendship, and then it doesn't happen, can be a heartache, where in the now and not yet, where we are invited to model Jesus and provide grace. and to be heartbroken. I think that's the beauty of the not yet that our Savior modeled for us, is that we are allowed to be heartbroken, even if culture says we're not. As Elena was getting into her next point. Point, yeah.
Well, as we think about, there's ways that we can still leverage our resources, right, within transients, to stay connected, to stay having our soul connections over distance? And are there times when we need to not be so transient? We need to make decisions even about the next career move that might be advanced if we move across the country, or another happen in church that doesn't seem to have all the issues. I'm not talking specifically about IC. IC has all of our issues but as well, but this kind of church hopping that takes place very easily in evangelicalism, because the music is not that great, or the preaching, or the these decisions that we kind of make independently because we can, versus choosing intentionally to stay. And that means being able to stay means that we have to obviously faithfully engage conflict, grace, and perseverance. Can you guys hear the typing sound?
Sorry.
I don't know why he has this typewriter sound on. So when we think about that, I'm a 9. I do not like conflict, but I am committed to stay. So that means I'm committed to conflict, to doing it well. So when you think about the components of healthy conflict in kingdom community, what comes to mind? What are the components of that? Especially the ones we need to work on.
Humility.
Yes, say more, Nancy.
Well, if it's something, your part in it, owning what you, I used to work in social work, and the people that would get better, obviously, if I say it's obvious, it seems like it should be obvious, how the people that own it, people that don't own it are in denial, and they don't usually get much better. So it's kind of that same thing of humility, realizing, okay, this is my part in this, whatever the conflict is. And along with that, not beating yourself up for it as well. That's kind of what I can do, but it's just going to, okay, this is how it is. This is what I did, and my part in it. But I'm not a bad person because this happened. There's still grace. But
yes.
Understanding our own trigger points and unhealed wounds from the past, so that when we have a high caliber reaction to something, where that's stemming from, and encouraging others to do the same.
Ooh, that's huge. Yeah. It's tempting to make it like, no, this is just an isolated incident that I'm just really mad at you, rather than doing the hard work of going back and working through the things that actually made that trigger so intense.
I think not something I'm necessarily very good at, but really hearing the other person out while at the same time holding hope that by working through this, whatever this is, that we're going to be stronger on the other side of this thing. I guess for me, the listening part, like not just pretending to listen, not just, but like really hearing them, so I can really kind of feel their position, almost experience their position as they're trying to express it to me. So I can almost feel like I can like really genuinely see it from their side. And
And if we're bringing Enneagram into it, I'm a 7, so I think acknowledging it is important, and acknowledging it, and then I think just holding it with compassion, like both hearts within this space of compassion, in the sense of like being on the same team to resolve it, rather than.
Oops.
Oh, Steffi, you went away for a second.
We lost you. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I can't find my computer. What was the part? When did you lose me? Or just brief? Was it just a second?
Yeah.
No, okay. I think that was all. I was probably just expanding upon what I was already saying.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
How about not just an individual, like a one-on-one conflict, but a kind of community conflict, as we kind of experienced a lot of in 2020, variety of views and real strong opinions or decision made in a church that lots of people feel different ways about. How do we navigate that in a healthy way in kingdom community? What do you think are the components of doing that well?
I think that a big component is grace. Having grace for one another. So, because it's so easy if you think the opposite of whatever this person is speaking of or this community is speaking of, it's super easy just to like pounce on that and say, no, you're wrong. But it's like grace and like what Matt said with the whole hearing them out piece. So, but overall, yeah, grace, I would say, is a huge thing that we need to get better at in certain situations and stuff, in all situations. But yeah,
I'd say humility too, because I know something that's kind of come home for me in the last year in particular is just how much our perspective can change as we learn and grow and read more, talk more to other people outside of our echo chambers and such. And just thinking that there are things that I couldn't see 10 years ago that maybe I can see now. And so therefore, I have to assume that 10 years from now, I'm going to be changing my perspective on some things that I hold now. So just kind of recognizing what we don't know. And therefore, it kind of opens up, I think, the opportunity to talk more with other people and hear what they have to say and give it consideration and respect it. Because we're all at a certain point on that journey of understanding, and we hope to get, more clarity, more understanding as we mature and, grow in our discernment. But that we're all where everything we know is really something that if it's in line with what God says is true, it's understanding that He's given us. So there's a receiving that comes that's not really our doing. I mean, God gives us that. So just recognizing that our need for His enlightenment helps me to value and respect where other people are, even when they don't agree with me.
Absolutely.
I mean, kind of what Shelby, what you and Will were saying seems to be run on the same thread, and it's essentially the gospel that we see others and we hold things loosely and we don't have golden calves because we need grace for one another and ourselves, and that we're probably going to disagree with ourselves for our 10 years from now. So, and yeah, I think that was one big thing that came up for me, is understanding that we have to, in healthy communal conflict, we have to understand what's the bottom line. What are the hills we're called to die on? I'm not speaking for anyone here, but Daniel Seiler, that's the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the dignity of every human, So other than that, like, I mean, there's orthodoxy for sure, and we need to stay in line with orthodoxy. But yeah, I think communicating.
I think I have unknowingly done damage in the past by being a safe place for people to malign other people to me, thinking that I was helping them decompress or sort. And really what I should have said was, that's not yours to share with me. That's not mine to hear. You need to take that directly to that person. And it's not helping for me to be part of this. And I realized you cause the wound to fester if someone is in this mindset, and the storm gets bigger the more they speak to you, and it becomes more problematic and less healing.
Mhm. Yes, so very true. And that can be such a tricky line, especially when you're in that space of just being confidant or whatever. And I think the spirit of that becomes clear. Am I talking through this so that I can have a fruitful, restorative conversation that, yeah, I think I'm assuming the best about this person, moving towards that person rather than talking in a way that actually then develops a sense of offense in the person that's listening as well. And that can be so easily done. So yes, I love that. Keeping those not only short accounts with one another, but the direct accounts with one another, rather than the whole community or like 4 or 5 people now know that I'm in conflict with this other person. That's so easy to do. I'm totally guilty of that.
Wow. We've had the privilege of being with a gentleman and his wife for a number of years, not being with them as much, but at least had in relationship. And he pointed out one day that he divides his life into opinion, conviction, and doctrine. And he says, opinion, if I can state that as I go into a conversation, or even ask that, is this your opinion, is this your conviction, or is this your doctrine that you would die for? That's, Daniel, I love what you said about what would I go on a hill on my sword, when would I fall on my sword kind of thing. Those are the doctrine things, the doctrinal stuff. And everything else can be negotiable. Certainly the conviction are things that life seems to have solidified. And I have more, I've bought more into this, but anyway, just that was helpful to clarify in my own life, what is my opinion? What is my conviction? What are my doctrines?
With that, like it's, like what you're with that, it can feel so easily I can feel so passionate about one side of something, and whether it's whichever 3 that is, I can feel that way pretty quick. But I think the thing that's really helped me a lot in what you were saying, Elena and Daniel, just about not just one-on-one, but as a whole group, when we feel like there's feist between sides, or it's just, I think that's really helped me the most is realizing that I don't have to control the situation. It's not my responsibility. It's not mine to make everything right. It's Christ's to make everything right, and he is making everything right.
Yeah, exactly.
I just have to be humbly do my best to be a part of that, and wherever I think he's leading me. And like you said, I think Shelby, just realizing that there's a whole lot I disagree with my old self on. And so I think that plays into it so well. And like when I was younger,
Sorry to cut you off. Just want to honor time. Sorry to cut you off, but your point right there is actually a fantastic segue into it's assuming the best in others. We have the beautiful Corinthians 13 love as in our notes here. and just the last verse, that love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And I think assuming the best in others in conflict, right? Like, I think, Nancy, you were saying about owning what you can own. I think in my own personal conversations, whether it's like someone offended me at work and I have to have a conversation about it, owning what I can own in that conversation is always, for something small to that, to the bigger things of owning, of assuming that they're going to have a positive response because I trust their relationship with me. In more like intimate settings, maybe not necessarily in communal, like big communal settings, right? Like communicating, like I do not envy church leadership, any church leadership in 2020, but because of the decisions that had to be made. But I think that there's always, and even in individual relationships, there will always be, you do what you think is right, you own what you can, but you confront and assuming the best in them, and sometimes it just doesn't work out.
And I think what you said, Matt, so beautifully expresses the holding the tensions of doing what I can, but ultimately I can't make all of this better especially if it's a large and complex situation. And so not going beyond what God has called us to do in any aspect of conflict, but trusting again that the Holy Spirit is at work, and there maybe are just some things he's going to need to do for it to be resolved, or maybe on earth we won't ever see it fully resolved. There's elements of that. And so that's what I love about the last portion of Corinthians 13:7 is always hopes, always perseveres. What does it mean to persevere, especially in places of conflict? And that's a manifestation of love, to be able to persevere and continue to hope even when something looks pretty bleak. So we still have a couple more topics here, so we want to get to those, and then get to maybe some personal reflection on action steps. We talked some about money last time, and so we want to think about that again, and specifically in terms of kingdom community, and thinking about the church in Acts 2, and we're all very familiar with this passage, but a lot of people think of it as kind of the utopia, or the perfect version of communism, or whatever it might be. But I think ultimately what it's expressing is a spirit of generosity, of open-handedness. When it says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, there's more than just about money here, obviously, too, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So, similar question. How does kingdom community shift our perspective about our personal money or our family money?
Well, I don't know if this is a verse or if it's just like a saying talking about like how I think this is more also pertaining to like a mindset. Is like, none of our positions are ours. Like, they're not, even though we, in the earthly view, we, I bought this notebook, or, those kind of things. Having that mindset of just like, you know what, God, you blessed me with this financial, whatever, this money, and it's a blessing, and it's not mine. So to think of that, so I think it's part of it's like loosening a grip on your finances, which is admittedly for me, it's hard. So yeah.
I'll follow again. Will, you get me thinking. Yeah, I've always thought that I held to that idea of sharing whatever I have with someone else that's in need, but it really wasn't, I don't think it really hit home for me until we were in a situation where we really were living paycheck to paycheck, had debt that we couldn't avoid, that we needed to pay off. And God kind of put us in a real needy situation where we had to actually rely on family for some help during a crisis, during the last recession. And when we were brought out of all of that years later, it was, for me at least, it's now pretty much a daily, it's a daily prayer of thankfulness for the fact that we can pay our bills. And so this last year, when we weren't directly affected by COVID, we both had jobs and we're making the same amount of money. It really we were just really encouraged to give more. And we ended up giving more last year than we've given ever, because we were going, well, we've got everything paid for. We've gotten more than what we need, so we can feel free to give it. So I think that really, it took being in a place of, of what felt for me like extreme need, and being dependent on people who were financially more stable than we were, to come out of that with a different frame of mind. So,
And there's
I would like to think that it wouldn't take something like that, for everybody to learn that lesson, but it did for us. I mean, even just today, just thinking, okay, thank you, Lord, we've got paychecks coming in the next week, and it looks like we can pay our bills. Thank you, and just really recognizing that not only can it all turn on a dime where you become dependent again, but also when you have more than what you need, be ready to give it.
Yeah, I love the two elements in that you're talking about, Shelby. The not only giving out of the gratitude of having been given to, but being willing to receive in times of need. I think we don't always consider that part of the kingdom exchange in regards to money, but being able to let others help us is really difficult, especially in a culture that values self-sufficiency and building your own kingdom and all of that. But to let the church give when you're needed, and then you get to have the joy of giving back in other seasons, like you've expressed. It's so true. Yeah.
It's the beauty of the church we go to, that we receive and release the gospel that heals. I think I've heard more than one sermon about how we have to evangelize our own hearts first.
A part of this scripture that struck me in a fresh way when I read it was that they sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. And I was thinking, I tend to think of, okay, what can I afford to give from my monthly income? But when there's a special need and I don't have any more in that budget category, how often do I consider selling something that I don't need or that I really love, but in order to give that to someone else, to give the earnings of that to someone else? I kind of think of my possessions, my current possessions, as something that's like, they're just mine. Like, and then if I have extra cash, like I'll give that away. But reading that again, I don't know, it's so straightforward, but it hit me this time. Like, how often would I be like, you know what, this family is really in need. I don't really need my iPad. I have a computer and my iPhone. I could sell my iPad and give that money. Like, how do we push ourselves to these new lengths, these new extents of what this might mean, and push against some of the materialism that, at least for me, I don't need 4 screens, but somehow I have 4 screens. So yeah, anything like that comes to mind that you think might be the next step in kingdom economy for you?
I think what you said there, like about pushing ourselves to that next, whatever that is, you know, like it also talks about that he loves a cheerful giver, and I find that we find that um, we find the most cheer in giving, because we have this such a perspective on how valuable that person is. You know, like we're really seeing how much God values them, and He's given us that a similar. Well, we don't value it nearly as well as He does, but you know, it's just I feel like the more I'm able to value a person or love a person, and to see His love for them, like then it's just all of a sudden giving is just like, well, of course I'm gonna give. I need help. You know, like yeah. Then it's just then it's not even a duty anymore.
I have a love for clearance shopping. It's somehow more virtuous to buy something 85% off. But if I take the money from buying things that are 85% off that I don't need, but I just can't resist buying, and I actually give it to someone to buy something that they maybe do need, then that would probably be a more faithful use of that money, and I can find entertainment elsewhere.
I've heard discussions of friends at different times talking about that passage in Acts, and like if people lived in community together, talking about like, can we actually share what we own? Like, does every single person on the block need a lawnmower, or could one person own the lawnmower and we share it, and then a different person owns the camping equipment or whatever it is? But that kind of radical sharing somewhat requires proximity, I think, in some ways. And so like in our current way of living, that makes it more difficult. But so I do think it takes a little more creativity. But just thinking about like, can we share, you know, let someone borrow our car, or even just giving someone a ride to drop off their car at the mechanic. But then how do we know that they need that? So I think that goes back to what was said earlier, just about even being willing to ask for help or share what our needs are, can sometimes be the biggest struggle. We want to be self-sufficient.
I love that, Brittany.
Yeah, it makes it come full circle, because for there to be proximity, you've got to stay, right? I mean, and to stay, a lot of times you get to know your needs, which means that you're being vulnerable, and you're receiving the gospel and knowing that you have needs as well. And so I think what you're articulating is very full circle. Thank you.
Yeah. And how often in our individual mindset do we think, oh, I don't have a lawnmower, I don't have a whatever it is, I should look on Amazon and get myself one, instead of reaching out first and seeing and saving that money to give, or, you know, for a different purpose, hospitality or whatever. So I love that idea.
You know, IAC Exchange on Facebook, it's a Facebook page, and we do that. I mean, I've seen people need power tools, trucks for the weekend, housing, lawnmowers, and it happens. People match up. And so anyway, we sort of do that.
That's so true. I love that too. Well, any last thoughts on that one? All right. Kind of the last thing before we do some breakout groups and actually try to think through personally what our application might be from our conversations. Wanted to kind of go back to the capacity question. I think when we talk about community, and especially hospitality, or, you know, if you're single, getting
having families over or getting involved in having a more diverse community, at least for myself, I can kind of go spinning of like, how am I going to get all the energy and emotional energy and physical energy to do this? And we can feel this pressure that comes with these conversations to do more, and then we just don't because it's too overwhelming. And so we want to, again, acknowledge Dan here is an extrovert and has a whole lot more capacity for people than I do as an introvert. And so how do we not just make this about volume or the amount of people that we have over, or, again, this large network, thinking that the larger the network, the more community we're building. How do we make this sustainable according to our own personal capacity? And including the people that are already in our networks, perhaps, and being more intentional in those versus having to build wider, bigger ones. For some of us, that might be the challenge, to build wider, bigger ones. For others, it might just be being more intentional within the networks that we have.
Or staying within the networks.
Or staying, yes, rather than bouncing around when one network feels kind of boring or there's too much conflict or whatever it might be. And so, yeah, kind of this question of, is what we are currently giving our time, our money and energy to something that is oriented towards the kingdom? And that kingdom orientation still includes things like self-care and family time, nuclear family time, and chosen extended family time as well. But just thinking through each of those dynamics, is this oriented towards the kingdom? Or am I trying to prove something to myself or to others? Am I too insulated? Just kind of assessing your own personal capacity and letting the Holy Spirit speak into that as well, where there needs to be stretching maybe, or where there needs to be a pulling back. So that's a question we very much want you to consider as we move into this last discussion time of assessing, kind of thinking through what your primary takeaway has been from these last 3 classes, and talking together about what is one step that you'd like to take in that particular area, your takeaway area, in a time-bound context. I put down next week, but if you want to put it 2 weeks or so, just to kind of help ourselves think through concretely, how do we take these steps? So Linda, if you don't mind putting into breakout groups again, talk through what is one of your main takeaways from this time, these classes, and Dan's gonna write it in the chat for you. And what is one action step that you'd like to take in that area before next week or the week after? Chat, and then we'll come back together and finish up.
Elena, can you also repeat the question that you asked? Like, is the way I'm spending my time?
Oh, yes. Is what I'm currently, or we, if family, if you're thinking family or couple, is what we're currently giving our time, money, and energy to something that is oriented towards the kingdom? Just assessing the output, energy, money, all of that. Is it oriented towards the kingdom?
Ready?
Do it.
Y'all ready?
How long do you want to go this time?
Let's bring him back with 5 minutes to spare. How's that?
That's great.
That's not long, but
okay.
We can stay after too if anyone wants to keep talking.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Go team. Oops.
Hi. Keep sending you guys back. You're muted.
Gary Jewel was getting ready to tell us something, and I was like, bye.
Yeah, I'm leave right when you started.
People left right as we were doing this. So I'm like, oh, there are going to be a few places a little smaller. Sorry. Like,
That's fine. They'll be all right.
So,
like, oh, I had it all nice and pretty, but then they got wet. So
that's all right.
yeah, that's okay.
What you don't have to say unless you want to, but curious if you have anything that pressed you in particular as we talked about this.
You know, my brain's been a little bit fried because of everything, but
yeah, I don't feel like you just say anything.
yeah. No, it's good. I mean, I think just an encouragement to press in a little bit more. That's good. I've had rich relationships. And I just, it's reflecting back on those and seeing what it is now. At time, and I have some good ones. I mean, I work with really great people, I mean, but that's different than deep relationships too. So that's all.
Yeah.
No, I'm just emotional. You're good.
Is there a hug button?
Yeah.
Where's the hug? The reaction.
Yeah. Your guys are sweet. But yeah,
Fair.
I've really messed up. Some people have 2 now, and then other people have like 4 people in there. Oh well. But
that's fine.
A few people dropped out, like Ken's gone, I think, and it's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, Ken warned us of this. The last class will be kind of sparse, and
yep.
We were expecting that, and I was still kind of surprised. So
yeah, you have people that actually, it felt like you had some new people last week and everything. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a little weird, but other than that.
Yeah.
And any connection with him at all since?
With that lady, I
Yeah.
have not seen her. So I need to look. I can look up. I don't know if she came to church this week or not, but yeah. So no, I haven't. Sometimes people are hit or miss, with stuff like that. But I mean, that was the other nice lady. I think she did come back this week, like to church. The other nice, new girl. I think she might have come to the welcome thing. But so yeah.
I forget her name, but
Was it Lauren?
Might have been Lauren or Alyssa. I'm thinking Alyssa, but maybe that's wrong.
Somebody.
I'm not a detail guy, so if it's not in front of me, I'm not paying attention to it. Sorry.
It's all good. Did I do it right with it? I could maybe bring him back before. I thought I got the right timing, but maybe I mistimed it.
I think you're fine.
Him back. We'll just bring him back, rush him back, like I did last time. Yeah. No, they should know it's. They knew we were going to bring him back right about that time, so it's fine. How about you guys? Did you learn anything in pursuit of this class? Or was it more kind of confirmation and helping like crystallize it?
I think what it does is it gives me people in context and a launching pad to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that are going through my head right now. I think I am really interested to see. Yeah, I'm just interested to see a lot of things especially the ACNA. I don't know. I'm interested to see where this could go. Because I just think I don't know if you are familiar with any of the drama around the statement they released a week and a half ago.
No, I should probably get familiar with that. No.
Well, they released a statement on identity and sexuality, the bishops did. And it was, yeah.
It was not fine or not?
Well, that's a long other conversation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Just Google pastoral statement ACNA, and you will. Right. I will let you make decisions for yourself on that.
All right.
It's about a 20-minute read. So, yeah.
Okay.
That was a good face.
I'm actually like a communications director for our diocese, so I should probably figure out this. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
we didn't communicate, like our diocese didn't communicate anything about that. So
yeah, and I would be interested to hear Bishop Ken talk about it. Because I've got some issues with it, but that's not the point of this conversation or me bringing this up. With it, I know some other people within another diocese that have some that are doing. It's just interesting in kind of the focus being something not as something ethereal, quite honestly, and lofty. That we're doing this class, like we're trying to get down into the weeds and just communicate the desire for family and how to love one another.
I think the main contention of it, right, is this, whether people should use gay Christian or not, the language.
It's just language.
Gay Christian, if that's appropriate, or if that is adopting too much of the cultural narrative. And
gotcha. It's more of a wording issue, or basically a posture issue, kind of.
Well, I think their posture is fairly loving throughout the whole statement. I just think it's fairly I'm going to say it aloof.
Oh, really? Oh, they didn't. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
And those statements are like, they're bishops, right? So like it's pastoral, but yet it's also guiding and in some ways distant, because I can see, and I don't know, but I can see the role of the bishops is like, we've got to protect orthodoxy here. Like we've got to guide, and I see that, but it's also like, was this really important right now?
Yeah.
Right. Is there, especially for people with the experience of as their same-sex attraction, or trying to live out all this complexity anyways, and then adding to it this is how we need to refer to it, or this is how you shouldn't refer to it, just doesn't feel very helpful in the actual daily living out these experiences.
Yeah. Somebody else giving words for
what's that?
Somebody else trying to put words for it that aren't.
Yeah, without being a part of the experience and the wounding that's come from the church and trying to figure it out in the first place,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, hear me. I mean, that is not why I brought that up. It was just I just thought it was really, I mean, it's so Jesus I have a friend, she lives in New York City. She texted me about it and said, how do you feel about this? And I'm like, well, but, and she said, it seems like we could be focused on building family instead. And I was like, we are. And so I just, I love that we are in a lot of ways trying to take a shot at what does it mean to be the family of God, and to love one another well.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I took up all that time. Sorry, Elena.
No, you're good. That was
2 minutes and 3 seconds left.
What? For what?
What did you learn?
Oh.
Okay, we have like a minute before we need to bring it back, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that any of this was particularly new, but I think that it was a helpful recognition for me again of how easily I gravitate towards people who are like me. So I'm advocating diverse community, and yet in my free time, I primarily hang out with the other singles, which like we're all really flexible and we can do spontaneous things, and that isn't bad in and of itself, but to vary it more, or to kind of like team up and maybe host a family for dinner, like we cook for, maybe even a family with a bunch of kids that never gets an invite because there's a lot of them, or things like that, where again, it takes being intentional and not just the path of least resistance. And so I think I was recognizing that. So yeah, how to feel that out, because we can only use obviously the encouragement of people in our same experience and not abolish that, but somehow carve out time and space to be more intentional. So I think that's been my main takeaway as I've thought about my personal application.
Well, that's good. Okay. Oh, it's about time. So I'm going to close all the rooms and rush them back. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks.
You're the best.
Oh, this time it gives them the 27 seconds.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Well, that's fine.
Jen,
Jen Wilson, I love you.
love you, girl.
Hey, I love you too, Mr. Oh, sorry, that's my fur baby being a baby.
Hi, Hank.
Hi.
Jen, hi.
What a gorgeous smile on your picture, Jen. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
I can no longer prank Steffi because she changed her view. So.
Oh.
Was she telling you how she was going to prank me?
No, but I can.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Want to honor your time, but we're going to stay past a little bit as well. Anyone want to start by what was your takeaway, and then an action step? If anyone feels obliged.
I see the jewels discussing over there.
Yeah, that's right. We'll call you out.
No pressure.
Real fast. I used to pray, Lord, what's next? After spending time with you all and these discussions, which we have greatly appreciated, the question has been morphed a little bit to, Lord, who is next?
Mm. Mm. I love that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, so this isn't an action step, but I would say that as we come out of this has been a great discussion to be participating in as we come out of our COVID cocoons.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Because yeah, it's been a pain for me to try and connect. I came to IAC 9 months before the stay-at-home order, and it feels like in a lot of ways I've got to start all over. So thankful to have this discussion and give people some context as well.
Could you call it the COVID cocoon, Judy? Is that what you said? That's great.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take anyone's opportunity to speak away, but I did want to give people a challenge, if you will. And that is to, in some ways, answer your question, Dr. Gary, about who's next. And it is to step out and reach out to someone who's not like you. Singles, if you're a married couple that you don't know, as we talked about, a posture this whole class, not in a way to like take them on as projects, right? But to intentionally get to know, and it probably won't work out. As we've said, a lot of times this can get messy and it's not very sexy, and it's just kind of relationships are just kind of a Tuesday, at times. but to have 10 couples, like the Jules were saying, 40 some odd years later is beautiful. So yeah, that's an encourage from me. I will feel free to please reach out to either one of us. We know this formal time of meeting together is soon over, but I'm glad to meet some of you here tonight, Judy, or through this class, Judy and Shelby and Brittany particularly. I'm probably going to be reaching out to y'all with some of my thoughts and ideas as well. So I know I speak for Elana and I don't want to take the last word, but just so thankful for you all and your time and your engagement and your love for Jesus and love for IC and God's church in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Nice.
Yeah, this has been really good. Thank you guys.
Mhm.
So glad.
Food for thought.
All right.
Oh, I want to give.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, who was talking? I cut off. Nobody. Okay. I couldn't. A couple.
One second.
Just a couple book recommendations. If you we just kind of skim the surface on so many topics. So, spiritual friendship. Obviously, we talked about Spiritual Friendship by Wesley Hill. Oh, you have it in there.
I do have it in there.
Another one that I've really enjoyed. It's not specifically about all these topics, but Reaching Out by Henry Nouwen talks about these 3 spiritual movements. Is that? Okay. 3 spiritual movements when going from loneliness to solitude, of dealing with that when we do experience the inevitability of loneliness. How do we move towards a place of solitude, which doesn't have the same kind of nagging pull on us and actually is more restorative than loneliness is. From hostility to hospitality and from illusion to prayer. That's in the way that Henry Nouwen writes. It's just a profound one, not too big either. And then one kind of talking about the cultural idolization of marriage and the way that the church has bought into that as well. A really expensive one is called Breaking the Marriage Idol by Cutter Calloway. That's a really good and entertaining read. And then one that's specifically about singles in the church is called One by One, Welcoming Singles into Your Church by Gina Delfonso. That's a really good one, kind of talking through the experiences. She's researched and conversed with all types of singles. And so that's called One by One, Welcoming Singles into Your Church by Gina Delfonso. I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, we're getting feedback here.
Kind of talking through the research and everybody's muted, but anyways, so yeah, those are just a few books, and if you're interested in other resources as well, just let us know. But those have been great resources for me in a variety of different areas. So, and Dan's putting our email in.
Yeah, just in case, feel free, reach out. We would love to connect.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks to you all. So thankful for you guys. Yeah.
Thank
Feel free to
y'all.
stick around if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a blessed evening.
You do the same.
Thank you.
So we can stick around.
Thanks, guys. It was great. Appreciate it.
So glad.
Hey, are you guys tired? Do you need to go, or can I talk about just a couple of questions?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we'll go shortly, especially so we can let Linda.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
We're
Yes.
well, we're a host, so Linda can go if
Oh,
she
that's
needs
true.
to. We can stop if you need to go, Linda. We can stop recording and do